They say amnesia steals your past, but what if it was hiding something far more dangerous? When I took a job as a night nurse for a toddler in the most powerful Korean-American household in Chicago, I thought I was just desperate for rent money. I didn't expect the baby to stop crying the moment I held him. I didn't expect his grandmother to look at me like she'd seen a ghost. And I definitely didn't expect to find my own face in a photograph hidden in their library, dated 2 years ago, standing next to the man they're now forcing to marry someone else. My name is Tehilla Omarosa, and this is the story of how a 3-month-old baby brought down an empire and gave me back a life I never knew I'd lost.
Before we dive into this incredible journey, welcome to Soul Tales with Gold. If you love intense romance, powerful family secrets, and stories that'll have you on the edge of your seat, you're in the right place. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a story.
Now let's get into Tehilla's world. The blinding lights of my bedroom flickered above my head as I stared at the rejection letter on my phone screen. Another nursing position, gone. I'd applied to 17 hospitals in 3 months, and each one came back with the same polite variation of, "We've decided to move forward with other candidates." Tehilla, you okay? My roommate Jasmine poked her head into my bedroom, her box braids swinging. I locked my phone and forced a smile. Yeah, just another no. Girl, I don't understand it. You graduated top of your class, your clinical reviews were perfect. Except I can't remember anything before 2 years ago, I interrupted, the familiar frustration rising in my chest. Background checks get complicated when you wake up in a Detroit hospital with no ID, no memory, and no past. The accident, or whatever it was, had left me with nothing. No memories before age 21, just a blank slate and a head injury the doctors couldn't fully explain. The police had investigated, of course, but with no missing persons report matching my description and no hits in any database, I'd eventually been released as a Jane Doe who chose the name Tehilla because the social worker said it meant song of praise. And I'd needed something to hold on to. There's that private listing, Jasmine said carefully. The one offering $15,000 a month. I snorted. For a night nurse position? That's insane. It's probably a scam or some creepy situation. Or it's a rich family with money to burn who values privacy. She sat on my bed, pulling up the listing on her phone. Look, they've been posting for 6 weeks. If it were sketchy, it would have been flagged by now. The agency is legitimate. It's called Prestige Home Care. That's the same one that placed Sarah with the tech billionaire family. I took her phone and read through the listing again. Private night nurse needed, newborn care, 8 p.m. to 6 a.m., 6 nights per week. Must be discreet, professional, and comfortable with confidentiality agreements. Nursing degree required. Background in high-risk infant care preferred. Compensation, $15,000 per month plus room and board. Located in Lincoln Park. References required. Contact Prestige Home Care for interview. Discreet and confidentiality agreements, I muttered. That screams complications. It also screams rent money, student loans, and maybe enough left over to hire that private investigator you've been wanting to consult about your past. She had a point. The PI I'd found, specializing in cold cases and missing persons, wanted a $5,000 retainer. With this job, I could afford it in 2 months and still cover my expenses. Fine, I said, forwarding the listing to myself. I'll call tomorrow. The interview was set for the following Thursday at a cafe called La Creme. The woman who met me was elegant and severe. She introduced herself as Ms. Park, the family's household manager. She was probably in her 50s, with sharp eyes that assessed me from across the table before I'd even sat down. Miss Omarosa, she said. Your credentials are impressive for someone so young. 23, correct? Yes, ma'am. And your background check came back with some gaps. Here we go, I thought, biting my inner lips. I was involved in an incident 2 years ago that resulted in retrograde amnesia. I have all the medical documentation. Since then, I've built my credentials from scratch. I'm aware, Ms. Park interrupted, sliding a folder across the table. I've done extensive research. Your clinical performance is flawless. Your professors describe you as intuitive, particularly with infant care. That's what we need. I blinked. You're not concerned about my memory loss? Should I be? Ms. Park asked, raising an eyebrow inquisitively. I sucked in a deep breath and shrugged. Most employers are. A thin smile crossed her face. The family values discretion above all else. Your fresh start, shall we say, is actually advantageous. You have no connections to exploit, no society ties to gossip through. You're a blank slate. The phrase made me uncomfortable, but I needed this job. Can you tell me about the baby? 13 months old. Healthy now, but was born premature. He's had 3 night nurses already, none suitable. He's particular. She studied me carefully. The family situation is complex. There are tensions regarding inheritance and succession. Your job is to care for the child during night hours. Nothing more. You will not involve yourself in family matters, you will not discuss what you see or hear, and you will sign an NDA that includes a $500,000 penalty for breach. My throat went dry and my eyes nearly popped out of my eye sockets. $500,000? The family's privacy is worth that and more. Do we have an understanding? Every instinct I'd rebuilt over the past 2 years screamed caution. But so did my bank account, my mounting debt, and my desperate need to find out who I'd been before the blank space. When would I start? The Hwang estate in Lincoln Park was exactly what I'd expected and somehow still shocking. The mansion was sitting behind gates that required 3 separate security checks. Ms. Park had picked me up personally, explaining that the family preferred staff to arrive through proper channels rather than drawing attention with unfamiliar vehicles. The baby's father is Mr. Kiang, she explained as we drove through the grounds. He's the CEO of Hwang Industries, the 3rd largest semiconductor manufacturer in the world. The child, Jiho, is his heir. And the mother? I blurted out inquisitively. Ms. Park's expression hardened. Deceased. She had complications from childbirth. She wasn't approved by the family. The weight of that statement settled over me. That's tragic. I muttered under my breath. It's complicated, she corrected. You'll meet Madame Hwang, Kiang's mother, shortly. She's the matriarch. What she says is law in this household. You'll also likely encounter Mr. Kiang, though he keeps irregular hours. And there's the matter of Miss Valentina Corso. Who's that? I asked. Kiang's fiancé. The engagement was arranged years ago, long before Jiho's mother. Miss Corso has been understanding about the situation, though the wedding has been postponed twice now. I absorbed this as we pulled up to a side entrance. A love child from an unapproved relationship, a dead mother, an arranged marriage still on the table, and a baby caught in the middle. Suddenly, $15,000 a month felt like hazard pay. The nursery was on the 3rd floor, a sprawling suite decorated in soft grays and whites. Medical equipment I recognized from the NICU were lined one wall, monitors, a top-grade crib with built-in sensors, emergency supplies. This wasn't just wealth, nah, this was paranoia. Jiho had respiratory issues at birth, Ms. Park explained, following my gaze. He spent 6 weeks in intensive care. The family wants hospital-level monitoring at home. Understandable, I shrugged. Can I meet him? She led me to the crib where a tiny form lay sleeping. The baby was beautiful with delicate features, a shock of dark hair. His skin was clear like porcelain. He couldn't have weighed more than 12 pounds. As I watched, his face scrunched, preparing for a cry. He does that, Ms. Park said wearily. Every few minutes. The previous nurses couldn't soothe him. The family is concerned it's neurological, though doctors find nothing wrong. Without thinking, I reached into the crib, gently lifting Jiho into my arms. I'd held hundreds of babies during my training, but something about this one felt different. Familiar, somehow. His eyes fluttered open and locked onto my face. The crying stopped. Not gradually, not with the usual fussing and settling, but immediately. Jiho stared at me with an intensity that seemed impossible for a 13-month-old, his tiny hand reaching up to grasp at the air near my face. Well, Ms. Park breathed. That's unexpected. I cradled him closer, instinctively swaying in the gentle rhythm I'd learned in pediatric training. Jiho made a soft cooing sound, his entire body relaxing against me. My heart did something strange in my chest, a flutter of recognition I couldn't explain. Hello, little one, I whispered. I'm Tehilla, and it looks like we're going to be friends. More than friends, apparently. The male voice startled me. I turned to find a man in the doorway, and my breath caught in my lungs. He was tall, probably 6'2", with a face that was definitely carved by Greek gods. His jawline was defined, his dark eyes were currently red-rimmed from exhaustion, black hair disheveled like he'd been running his hands through it. He wore a suit, though the jacket was off and his sleeves were rolled up. But it was his expression that held me, raw grief barely contained, confusion, and something else I couldn't name. "Mr. Hwang," Ms. Park said quickly. "This is Miss Omarosa, the new night nurse." Kiang didn't acknowledge her. His eyes were fixed on me, or rather, on Jiho in my arms. The baby had turned his head toward his father, but made no move to fuss, contentedly settling against my shoulder. "He never does that," Kiang said softly. "With anyone. He screamed for 3 hours straight with the last nurse." Every baby has preferences, I managed, trying to ignore the way my pulse had kicked up. Sometimes it's about energy or smell or, "Have we met before?" The question stopped me cold. "I don't think so." I would remember. So would I, and yet. He stepped further into the room, moving with a predator's grace. "You're familiar. Your face, your voice. Do you have family in Seoul? Have you traveled to Korea?" "No," I said sharply, taking a step backwards. Then, softer, "No, I've never been abroad." "I'm sure we've never met, Mr. Hwang." "Kiang," he corrected absently, still studying me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. "If you're going to care for my son, formality seems ridiculous." "Mr. Hwang is appropriate," Ms. Park interjected firmly. "Miss Omarosa needs to review her duties and settle into her quarters. If you'll excuse us, Mom wants to meet her." Kiyoung's gaze finally broke from mine, shifting to Ms. Park. "She's in the West Library. She says it's non-negotiable." "Great. The matriarch." Ms. Park's expression suggested this was going to be unpleasant. "I'll take the baby," Kiang said, approaching me with his arms out. As I transferred Jiho to his father, our hands brushed. The contact was brief, but it sent a shock through my system. Kiyoung's eyes snapped to mine, and I knew he'd felt it too. For a moment, we stood frozen, the baby between us. Then Jiho started crying, shattering the moment. "Damn it," Kiang muttered, trying to soothe his son and failing. The baby's wails escalated rapidly, his face reddening. "He's been like this for weeks. The doctors say nothing's wrong, but—" "May I?" I asked. The relief on his face was palpable. The moment I took Jiho back, he quieted again, making small snuffling sounds against my neck. "That's impossible," Kiang said, but he wasn't arguing, just stating a fact that made no sense. "Babies know who feels safe," I offered, though even to my ears it sounded absurd. This was something else, something I couldn't explain. "I should meet your mother now." "Good luck," Kiang said dryly. "You'll need it." Madame Hwang sat in a wingback chair that looked like a throne, surrounded by bookshelves filled with leather-bound volumes. She was probably 70, but her posture was ramrod straight, her silver hair pulled into an elegant knot. She wore a traditional hanbok in deep navy, and her eyes, the same dark intensity as her son's, tracked me from the moment I entered. "Leave us," she said to Ms. Park, her English accented but commanding. Ms. Park hesitated. "Madam, perhaps." "Leave." The household manager retreated, closing the door with a soft click that sounded like a cell locking. "Sit," Madame Hwang commanded, gesturing to the chair opposite her. I sat, back straight, meeting her gaze without flinching. Something in her expression flickered with surprise, or was it approval? "You're very young," she said. "I'm qualified." I replied calmly. "Are you?" She reached for a folder on the side table, thick, official-looking. Tehilla Omarosa. 23 years old. No family on record. Memory loss from an unexplained incident 2 years ago. Before that, nothing. You appeared in Detroit with a head injury and no identification. The police investigation went nowhere. She looked up. "You're a ghost." "I'm a nurse," I corrected. "A good one. Your grandson needs care, and I'm capable of providing it." "My grandson needs many things. A caretaker is the least of them." She set the folder down, her fingers drumming once on the armrest. "Tell me, Miss Omarosa, do you believe in fate?" The question threw me. I don't understand. You will. She stood, moving to the window that overlooked the grounds. Jiho is my legacy. The heir to Hwang Industries, the next generation of a family that has built empires. His mother, her voice hardened. His mother was a complication. A foolish distraction that my son allowed to derail years of careful planning. I kept my expression neutral, though disgust roiled in my stomach. She was talking about a dead woman, the mother of the baby I was hired to protect. My son was engaged to Valentina Corso, a union that would have merged two powerful families. Then he met that woman, threw away everything, got her pregnant. She died, as fate would have it, and now we can correct course. The engagement will proceed once the scandal dies down. And Jiho? I asked quietly. Will be raised as a Hwang, with all the privilege and responsibility that entails. His mother's inferior bloodline is an unfortunate dilution, but not insurmountable. The woman's cruelty stunned me. You're talking about a baby who just lost his mother. I'm talking about reality, Miss Omarosa. This world isn't kind to sentiment. Her eyes bored into mine. You will care for the child. You will not form attachments. You will not discuss what you see or hear in this house. And most importantly, you will not interfere in family matters. Is that clear? Crystal. I nodded. Good. She returned to her chair, picking up a small bell and ringing it. Ms. Park reappeared immediately. Show her to her quarters. She starts tonight. As I stood to leave, Madame Hwang spoke again. Miss Omarosa? One more thing. I turned back. Stay away from my son. You're here for the baby, nothing more. Kiang's future is already decided. Don't complicate it with foolish ideas. The warning was clear. I nodded once and left, my mind spinning. Are you hooked yet? Because this is just the beginning of Tehilla's story, and things are about to get so much more intense. If you're loving this drama, don't forget to like this video and drop a comment telling me what you think is going to happen next. Now, let's get back to the story. My quarters were a suite larger than my former shoebox apartment, bedroom, bathroom, and a small sitting area. Everything was decorated in whites and soft lavenders, expensive but impersonal. A uniform waited on the bed, scrubs in navy blue, professional and understated. I changed quickly, pulling my long dark hair into a ponytail. The mirror reflected a stranger, as it always did. I'd spent 2 years looking at this face without recognition, brown skin, full lips, dark eyes that held questions I couldn't answer. Who had I been before? Why couldn't anyone find my past? And why did Kiang Hwang look at me like he knew the answer? A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. Come in, I called. A young woman entered, probably my age, wearing a similar uniform. Hi, I'm Bethany, the day nurse. Miss Park asked me to brief you before handoff. Tehilla, I said, shaking her extended hand. How long have you been with the family? 2 weeks, but I've been briefed on the whole situation. Jiho's a sweetheart, just very particular. She smiled warmly. Also, heads up, the family is intense. I met Madame Hwang. I shrugged nonchalantly. So you know. Bethany lowered her voice. Look, I just do my job and stay out of the drama, but there's a lot going on. Kiang is barely holding it together since the baby's mother died. The fiancé is just one desperate princess begging for Kiang's attention. And Madame Hwang runs everything like a military operation. What was she like? I asked. Jiho's mother. Bethany's expression softened. I never met her, she died before I was hired. But the staff who knew her said she was kind. Apparently, she and Kiang were really in love, which made the family lose their minds. She wasn't Korean, wasn't wealthy, wasn't approved. They fought the relationship hard. And now she's gone, and they're pushing him back to the arranged marriage. Exactly. It's medieval, if you ask me, but I'm just here to care for the baby. She glanced at her watch. Speaking of, let me show you his routine. We spent the next hour going over Jiho's care, feeding schedule, monitoring protocols, medication if needed, though he was healthy now, and the extensive documentation Madame Hwang required. Everything had to be logged, timed, and reported. He's going to love you, Bethany said as we finished. The way he calmed down earlier? I've never seen that. The previous night nurses barely made it through their first shifts. He'd scream nonstop. Maybe he was just ready for a change, I said, even though deep down, I didn't believe it. At 8 p.m., I officially took over. Bethany left, and suddenly I was alone in the nursery with a sleeping baby and a dozen questions I couldn't ask. I settled into the rocking chair, pulling up the baby monitor feed on the tablet provided. The system was sophisticated, multiple cameras, vitals display, sound sensitivity. Nothing was left to chance. Jiho slept peacefully for the first 2 hours, and I used that free time to familiarize myself with the room, checking medical supplies and reviewing emergency protocols. Everything was top tier, exactly as expected. At 10:15, he woke up crying. I lifted him from the crib, and again, the instant he was in my arms, he settled. It was eerie and wonderful and deeply unsettling. I fed him his bottle, changed him, walked him around the room singing softly, a lullaby I didn't remember learning but somehow knew. "You're a mystery, little man," I whispered as he gazed up at me with those impossibly alert eyes. "But I've got mysteries of my own, so I guess we're even. Does talking to babies count as professional behavior?" I spun around to find Kiang in the doorway again. This time he was wearing a casual jeans and a soft gray sweater that made him look younger. "It's proven to help with cognitive development," I said, recovering my composure. "Babies need to hear language." I wasn't criticizing. He stepped into the room, hands in his pockets. I heard him crying on the monitor and came to check. "But you'd already handled it." "That's my job." "Right. Your job." He moved closer, his eyes on Jiho. "Can I hold him?" I transferred the baby carefully, but as expected, Jiho immediately started fussing. Kiyoung's jaw tightened, frustration and pain dancing across his face. "He hates me," he said quietly. "He doesn't hate you. He's processing a lot. His mother died," Kiang interrupted. "He was 2 weeks old when she hemorrhaged. They tried everything, but she was gone in hours. And now my son screams whenever I touch him, like he knows I failed to protect her." The grief in his voice was raw and unfiltered. Without thinking, I placed my hand on his arm. "That's not how babies think. He's just sensitive. It takes time." Kiang looked down at my hand, then up at my face. "Who are you really?" "I don't understand," I frowned. "Yes, you do." He shifted Jiho in his arms, trying to calm him and failing. "You walk in here, and my son, who has screamed for 1 year straight, acts like he's known you his entire life. My mother looks at you like you're a bomb about to explode. And I." He trailed off, a vulnerable expression crossing his face. "I look at you and feel like I'm forgetting something crucial." My heart pounded against my ribs. "I'm just a nurse, Mr. Hwang." "Kiang," he corrected again. "And you're not just anything." Before I could respond, Jiho's crying escalated. Kiang tried rocking him, making soothing sounds, but nothing worked. Finally, defeated, he handed the baby back to me and instant silence descended over the room again. "This is impossible," he muttered, running a hand through his hair. "Medically, psychologically, it makes no sense." "Babies are intuitive," I said, but he cut me off. "Don't give me platitudes." His eyes locked onto mine with an intensity that stole my breath. "There's something happening here. Something beyond a baby's preference. You feel it too, I can see it." I did feel it. That strange pull, the sense of recognition, the way my body relaxed when he was near even as my mind screamed warnings. But admitting it meant opening a door I couldn't close. "I should focus on Jiho," I said, stepping back. "It's late, and you should rest." For a moment, I thought he'd argue. Then he nodded slowly. "You're right. I have meetings early tomorrow anyway." He moved toward the door, paused. "Tehilla? Thank you. For caring for him. For whatever this is." After he left, I sank into the rocking chair, Jiho drowsy against my shoulder. My hands were shaking. What was happening? Why did this baby, this man, this entire situation feel like a puzzle I was supposed to solve? And why did every instinct I'd rebuilt scream that finding the answer would change everything? The next few nights established a pattern. I cared for Jiho from 8 p.m. to 6 a.m., and he was an angel in my arms, a terror for everyone else. During the day, I slept in my quarters, emerging only for meals I took in my room. The staff was friendly but distant, clearly trained not to gossip or overshare. On the fourth night, I met Valentina Corso. I was in the nursery around 9 p.m. when she swept in. She had a stunning model height and wore a pretty designer dress. Her hair was platinum blonde, styled in perfect waves. Gosh, she was beautiful in that intimidating, untouchable way. "So you're the miracle worker," she said, her voice carrying a slight Italian accent. "The nurse who's tamed the beast." I bristled at the description. Jiho isn't a beast. He's a baby. A baby who's derailed an entire family's plans, she said, moving closer. Her perfume was expensive and overwhelming. "But I suppose that's not your concern. You're just here to do a job." "That's right." She studied me with a disdainful expression. "You're younger than I expected. Prettier too. Does Kiang come by often during your shifts?" The question was casual, but the intent wasn't. "Occasionally, to check on his son." "His son," she repeated, something bitter in her tone. "Yes, the consequence of his little rebellion. At least the mother had the decency to die and clear the way." Rage flooded through me, swift and hot. "That's a disgusting thing to say." Valentina's eyebrows rose. "Excuse me? A woman died, and you're calling it convenient." She was someone's daughter, someone Kiang clearly loved. "Loved," Valentina interrupted with a harsh laugh. "You're a romantic, I see. How quaint. Let me educate you on reality, nurse. Kiang had an infatuation with an unsuitable woman who trapped him with a pregnancy. His family did everything to end the relationship, but he's stubborn. Now she's gone, the baby is here, and in 6 months, Kiang and I will marry as we were always meant to." "That's not cruelty, that's practicality. Does he love you?" The question slipped out before I could stop it. Valentina's expression hardened. "Love is a childish concept. We have compatibility, family approval, and shared business interests. That's worth infinitely more than whatever passion he felt for that woman." She stepped closer, invading my space. "And it's certainly worth more than whatever fascination he might develop for the help. So let me be clear, do your job, care for the baby, and don't develop ideas above your station. Kiang is mine. He always has been." She left in a wave of expensive perfume and silent threats. I stood there, my heart racing wildly while Jiho slept peacefully in my arms. The baby made a small sound, his hand curling against my chest, and something protective and fierce rose in me. "Your mother deserved better than this," I whispered to him. "And so do you." On the 6th night, everything changed. I was feeding Jiho around midnight when I heard raised voices from downstairs. Normally, I'd ignore it, not my business, as everyone kept reminding me, but one voice was clearly Kiang's, and he sounded devastated. "Can't do this anymore, mother. You'll do what's required of this family." Against my better judgment, I secured Jiho in his crib. He'd just fallen asleep and crept to the top of the stairs. The voices were coming from the West Library. "Sonny's been dead for over a year," Kiang said, and the pain in his voice made my chest ache. "Barely a year, and you're already planning my wedding to Valentina like she never existed." "Sonny." His lost love's name was Sonny. "That woman nearly destroyed everything we've built." Madame Hwang's voice was ice. "She was a distraction, a mistake. She was the love of my life." The words echoed through the house. "And she died bringing my son into this world while you all stood by, refusing to help, hoping she'd just disappear." "We offered her money to leave," Madame Hwang said coldly. "She refused. She knew what she was doing, trapping you with that pregnancy. She was pregnant because I loved her, because we were planning a future together before you interfered." "A future?" Madame Hwang laughed, bitter and sharp. "With a woman of no family, no standing, no value beyond a pretty face? You're the heir to Hwang Industries. Your marriage is a business transaction, not a romance novel." "Then find another heir," Kiang shot back. "I'm done. Done with the arrangements, the expectations, the complete disregard for anything resembling human emotion. You have a son now. You don't get to be done." Jiho needs stability, a proper family structure. Jiho needs a father who isn't being forced into a loveless marriage to please a tyrant. Kiang fired back. What followed next was the crackling sound of a hot slap, and then silence blanketed the whole air. Then Kiang's voice came again, low and dangerous. "That's the last time you'll ever do that." I barely had time to retreat before Kiang emerged from the library, his face burning with fury and grief. He stopped when he saw me at the top of the stairs. "How much did you hear?" he asked. "Enough," I admitted. There was no point lying. He climbed the stairs slowly, and I saw the red mark on his cheek where his mother had struck him. Something in my heart broke at the sight. "Are you okay?" I asked quietly. He laughed sarcastically. "Define okay." "My mother wants me to marry a woman I don't love within 6 months. My son screams whenever I hold him. And the one person I did love is dead because my family made her life hell." He reached the landing, standing close enough that I could see the gold flecks in his dark eyes. "So no, Tehilla, I'm not okay. I'm about as far from okay as it's possible to be." "I'm sorry," I said, and meant it. "About Sunny. About all of this. Are you?" He studied my face like he was searching for something. "Sometimes I think you understand more than you should. Like you know what it's like to lose everything." "I do," I whispered. "I woke up 2 years ago with no past, no identity, nothing. So yes, I understand loss." His hand rose, almost unconsciously, to touch my face. His fingers were warm against my cheek, his thumb brushing just below my eye. "Where did you come from, Tehilla Omarosa?" "I don't know," I breathed. "I've been trying to figure that out since I woke up in that hospital." "Maybe that's why Jiho knows you," he said softly. "You're both lost souls looking for where you belong." The moment stretched between us as though time itself had stopped. I should step back, maintain professional distance, remember Madame Hwang's warning and Valentina's threats, and the fact that I was hired help in a world of billionaires and arranged marriages. Instead, I leaned into his touch, just slightly, and watched his eyes darken with something that made my pulse race. "Kiang." Jiho's cry shattered the magical moment. We sprang apart like guilty teenagers. Kiang cleared his throat, stepping back. "You should, he needs you." "Right." "Yes." I turned toward the nursery, my face burning. "Tehilla." I looked back. "Thank you. For listening. For caring about Jiho the way no one else in this house seems to." He paused. "For caring, period." Then he was gone, disappearing down the hallway to wherever he spent his sleepless nights. I returned to the nursery where Jiho was working himself into a full tantrum. The moment I picked him up, he quieted, nuzzling against my neck with small, snuffling sounds. "Your daddy is a good man trapped in a terrible situation," I told him softly. "And your mama loved you enough to fight for you. Don't ever forget that." As I rocked him back to sleep, my mind spun. That moment with Kiang had been dangerous, unprofessional, and undeniably real. Something was building between us, something that went beyond logic or reason. And deep down, I knew it was going to complicate everything. While living with the Hwangs, the library became my forbidden territory. During my brief waking hours in the day, I found myself drawn to it. The staff had their routines, and I'd learned that between 1 and 3 p.m., the house was largely empty. Madame Hwang had meetings, Ms. Park ran errands, and most of the staff took their breaks. 2 weeks living with the family, I slipped into the West Library. It was massive, 2 stories of books connected by a wrought iron spiral staircase. The scent of leather and paper filled the air, and sunlight streamed through tall windows. It should have felt peaceful, but something about the space made my skin prickle. I wasn't sure what I was looking for until I found it. A section of photo albums, leather-bound and organized by year. I pulled one at random and started flipping through. Family photos, mostly. Formal portraits, business events, charity galas. Madame Hwang looking imperious, Kiang younger, but already carrying sadness in his eyes. Then I turned a page and my heart stopped. It was me. Same face, same dark eyes, same full lips. But this version wore her hair in long box braids, and she was laughing at something off camera, standing next to Kiang at what looked like a university event. They were both younger, maybe 19 or 20, and the way he looked at her. The way he looked at me. My hands shook as I stared at the photograph. The woman wore a university sweatshirt with Northwestern across the front. Kiang had his arm around her shoulders, casual and intimate. I flipped forward desperately. More photos. The same woman appeared again and again over several months. At a coffee shop with Kiang. In what looked like a study group. At a winter formal, wearing a silver dress, Kiang's hand on her waist. Then, abruptly, the photos stopped. The rest of the album contained only family events, business functions. The mystery woman vanished from the record as completely as I'd vanished from my own life. What are you doing in here? I slammed the album shut, spinning to find Madame Hwang in the doorway. Her expression was arctic. I'm sorry, I was just snooping, she finished coldly. I knew I recognized you. My blood turned to ice. What? She moved closer, each step deliberate. The moment I saw you, something nagged at me. You look different, the hair, the weight, something about your eyes. But I never forget a face, especially one that threatened my family's future once before. I don't understand. Your name wasn't Omarosa then. It was Banks. Tehilla Banks, scholarship student at Northwestern University, where my son was completing his MBA. Her eyes glittered with cold triumph. You met in a Korean language class. He became infatuated. You started dating despite my explicit instructions that he focus on his engagement to Valentina. The room spun. That's impossible. I would remember. Would you? She tilted her head. Memory is such a fragile thing. Especially after head trauma. The implication hit me like a physical blow. What did you do? I protected my family, she said simply. You were a complication, just like that Sunny girl. At least she had the sense to stay off the grid when we paid her off the first time. The first time? Madame Hwang smiled, and it was terrifying. Sunny didn't appear in Kiyoung's life by accident. She was sent away once, came back pregnant to force the issue. I respect the tenacity, if not the method. She moved to the album I'd been holding, pulling out one of the photos. But you, Miss Banks, you were different. You actually loved him. That made you more dangerous. I couldn't breathe. What did you do to me? I made you disappear, she said calmly. 2 years ago, you were in a car accident. Tragic. You survived, obviously, but with significant head trauma and no identification, we made sure of that. The police investigation went nowhere because there was nothing to find. You rebuilt yourself from nothing exactly as intended. You're lying. But even as I said it, pieces were clicking into place. The blank slate. The missing past. The way Kiang looked at me like he was trying to remember. The way Jiho recognized me like. Oh God, I whispered. Sunny. What was her real name? Madame Hwang's smile widened. I think you know. Tehilla. Sunny was a nickname. She was me. I'm Jiho's mother. The world tilted. I grabbed the back of a chair to keep from falling. It was impossible. Insane. Except it explained everything, why the baby knew me, why I'd felt that instant connection, why Kiang couldn't stop staring at me like I was a ghost. Because I was. I was the woman they thought had died. The woman whose death they'd probably faked. Very good, Madame Hwang said. I wondered how long it would take you to piece it together. Longer than I expected, honestly. But then, we did a very thorough job of erasing you. Where's Sunny? I demanded. The woman who died, who is she? A convenient coincidence. An actual Jane Doe, approximately your age and description, who died of complications we may have exacerbated. The hospital was very accommodating when we made a generous donation and explained that publicizing our family tragedy would be devastating. You killed someone and stole her identity to fake mine? We solved multiple problems efficiently, she corrected. Kiang got to mourn his lost love, closing that chapter. The baby had a proper origin story. And you got a fresh start, away from a life you could never truly be part of. Rage, pure and incandescent, flooded through me. I have a son. You stole my son from me. I saved him from a life of poverty and obscurity with an unsuitable mother, she snapped. Jiho is a Hwang. He deserves better than whatever you could have provided. I could have provided love. A mother who wanted him. I yelled. Love. She spat the word like a curse. Love is what got you into this situation. Love is what made my son throw away a perfectly good engagement for a nobody. Love is a weakness I won't allow to destroy 3 generations of careful planning. I stared at this woman, this monster who had stolen my entire life, and something cold and hard settled in my chest. You made a mistake, I said quietly. I rarely make mistakes. You brought me back. You hired me to care for my own child, thinking I wouldn't remember. That was your mistake. I stepped closer, letting her see the fury in my eyes. Because I remember now. Not everything, not yet, but it's coming back. And when it does, when I have proof of what you've done, I will burn this entire family's reputation to the ground. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across her face. You have no proof. It's your word against mine, and you're mentally unstable with a history of amnesia. Am I? I pulled out my phone. Because I've been documenting everything since I got here. Every conversation, every threat, every moment you've shown who you really are. And I'm very good at finding evidence, had to be, when I was trying to recover my own past. It was a bluff. I had nothing but scattered photos and suspicions. But Madame Hwang didn't know that. If you go public with any accusations, I'll destroy you, she said, but there was a thread of worry in her voice now. I have lawyers, resources, connections. And I have a living child who shares my DNA, I interrupted. A child the public believes was born to a dead woman. How's that going to play in the press? Billionaire family fakes mother's death, steals baby? I may not remember everything yet, but I know how scandals work. We faced off across the library, 2 women locked in a battle that had been years in the making. What do you want? Madame Hwang finally asked. I want my son. I want Kiang to know the truth. And I want you to face consequences for what you've done. That will never happen. Then I guess we're at an impasse. She studied me for a long moment. You've changed. The girl Kiang dated was soft, naive. You're harder now. Survival does that, I said. You made sure I had to fight for everything. Congratulations, you created an enemy who knows how to fight back. We'll see. She moved toward the door, paused. For what it's worth, Jiho is better off thinking his mother is dead than knowing she's the help. Stay in your lane, Miss Omarosa, or the consequences will be severe. After she left, I sank into a chair, my entire body shaking. Memories were flooding back now, triggered by the confrontation. Flashes of Kiang and me studying together. His laugh. The way he'd kiss my forehead. A winter night when he'd told me he loved me. Damn the consequences. Then darker memories. Madame Hwang threatening me. Being followed. The car that had run me off the road, not an accident at all, but a deliberate attack. They'd tried to kill me. When that failed, they'd stolen my identity, my past, my child. They'd let me believe I was nobody, nothing, while they raised my son and pushed Kiang toward another woman. I pulled out my phone with trembling hands and opened a secure note app. Started documenting everything I could remember, every photo I'd seen, every threat made. It wasn't enough yet, but it was a start. Then I did something I'd been avoiding. I called the private investigator I'd been planning to hire. Hawthorne Investigations, a gruff voice answered. My name is Tehilla Omarosa, I said. But I think it used to be Tehilla Banks. And I need you to help me prove that a billionaire family faked my death and stole my child. There was a pause. Then the voice came again. I'm listening. The next 72 hours were a blur of covert investigation and careful acting. I continued my night shifts with Jiho, holding my son with a fierce love that threatened to overwhelm me. Every moment with him felt precious and stolen, because that's exactly what it was. Hawthorne, the PI, moved fast. He was expensive, but I paid his retainer with money I didn't have, putting it on credit because what was debt compared to getting my life back? I found your student records, he called on the second day. Tehilla Nicole Banks, enrolled at Northwestern 3 years ago on a full academic scholarship. Dean's List, majoring in biochemistry with a minor in Korean language and culture. Then in March of your junior year, you disappeared. Officially, you withdrew for personal reasons, but there's no paper trail after that. No forwarding address, no contact information, nothing. What about the car accident? I asked. That's where it gets interesting. There was an accident reported, single vehicle off I-94, driver ejected. But the police report is weirdly sparse. No investigation into how you lost control, No follow-up when you woke up with amnesia. It's like someone made sure the case went cold immediately. Someone did, I said grimly. Can you prove it? Not yet. But I'm pulling strings. Hospital records, insurance claims, witness statements. If there's a trail, I'll find it. What about Sunny? The woman who supposedly died in childbirth? That's trickier. The death certificate lists her as Sunny Lee, no other identification. She was admitted to a private hospital in labor, died of hemorrhage complications, body was cremated immediately per family wishes. Everything is technically legal, but it's all fake, I finished. That's my working theory. If we can prove the woman who died wasn't you, and that the Hwang family knew it, we've got them for fraud, kidnapping, and a host of other charges. Do it. Whatever it takes. The hardest part was maintaining normalcy around Kiang. He visited the nursery every night now, sometimes staying for hours. We talk about everything and nothing, his work stress, my nursing training, the absurdity of his mother's expectations. She wants me to set a wedding date, he told me on the 10th night, his voice hollow. 6 months from now, maximum. Says it's time to move forward. We were both sitting on the nursery floor, Jiho on a play mat between us. The baby was awake and alert, his eyes tracking between us like he understood the conversation. Do you love Valentina? I asked, even though I knew the answer. No. I barely like her. He ran a hand through his hair, a gesture I was learning meant he was frustrated. I loved Sunny. She was everything my family hated, independent, outspoken, completely herself. She didn't care about my money or status. She just saw me. Tell me about her, I said softly, needing to hear my own story from his perspective. His face softened with memory and pain. We met in a language class. I was there because my mother insisted I perfect my Korean for business. She was there because she was genuinely interested in the culture. We got paired for a project, and I was an arrogant ass who assumed she'd be intimidated by who I was. Was she? God, no. She called me out for being pretentious within the first 5 minutes. He laughed, the sound bittersweet. I'd never met anyone like her. She challenged me, made me laugh, made me think about what I actually wanted instead of what was expected. We started dating, and for the first time in my life, I felt like I was living for myself. What happened then? I pressed on, curiosity pricking at my nerve ends. My mother happened. His expression darkened. She found out about Sunny and lost her mind. Threatened to cut me off, disinherit me, destroy Sunny's academic career. I thought I could handle it, keep Sunny safe. But then, the accident, I whispered. Yeah, Sunny was in a car accident. By the time I got to the hospital, she was unconscious, and the doctors said she had severe head trauma, amnesia. Then my mother showed up with lawyers and doctors I'd never seen before, and suddenly Sunny was being transferred to a different facility for specialized care. They wouldn't let me see her, and said I was making her condition worse. My chest tightened. What did you do? I believed them, he said, his voice breaking. Like an idiot, I believed my mother when she said Sunny would recover better without me, that our relationship had been unhealthy, that I needed to let her go. So I did. I went back to my engagement with Valentina, threw myself into work, tried to forget. Until Sunny came back. Yeah. Few months later, she showed up at my office. She looked different, almost desperate, saying we had unfinished business. She was pregnant, so I assumed it was the pregnancy hormones that changed her so much. She didn't remember everything about us, but she remembered enough. She said she'd been in a facility, recovering, and only recently discovered she was pregnant from before the accident. None of that was true, I realized with sick certainty. The woman who'd come back as Sunny had been someone else, playing a role in Madame Hwang's scheme. She'd probably had a plastic surgery done so she'd look like me. But Kiang had believed it was me, returned from whatever hell his mother had sent me to. I was thrilled, he continued. Terrified, but thrilled. I told my mother I was calling off the engagement, that Sunny and I were going to raise our child together. She fought me every step, but for once I didn't care. Then Sunny went into labor early and she died. I completed the words quietly. She died, he repeated, the words like a poem. Complications, they said, were unpredictable. I held her hand while she slipped away, and the last thing she said was to take care of our baby, to protect him from my family. Tears streamed down my face. I'm so sorry. Sometimes I wonder if she'd still be alive if I'd fought harder the first time, he said. If I'd refused to let my mother separate us, if I'd been stronger. It's not your fault, I interrupted fiercely. Your mother is a manipulative monster who will do anything to maintain control. You can't blame yourself for her actions. He looked at me, and his expression shifted. Why do you care so much? You're a nurse who's known me for just 3 weeks. Why does my tragic love story matter to you? Because it's my story too, I wanted to scream. Because I'm Sunny, and that's my baby, and we've both been victims of your mother's cruelty. Instead, I said, because everyone deserves someone on their side. And because Jiho deserves a father who doesn't carry this guilt forever. Kiang reached out, his hand covering mine on the floor between us. You're remarkable, you know that? Sometimes when I look at you I see. See what? Her, he whispered. I see Sunny in you. The way you tilt your head when you're thinking, the way you sing to Jiho, even the way you argue with me. It's like she sent you to. I don't know. Finish what we started. My heart cracked a little. He was so close to the truth, dancing around it without realizing. Maybe she did, I said softly. His thumb brushed across my knuckles, and electricity shot through me. We were leaning closer, the air between us charged with possibility and danger, and then Jiho started crying. We sprang apart, the spell broken. Kiang cleared his throat, standing quickly. I should go. Early meeting tomorrow. Right. Of course. I sputtered. He paused at the door. Tehilla? Thank you. For listening. For caring about us. After he left, I picked up Jiho, holding him close. Your daddy almost remembered, I whispered. Just a little longer, baby. I'm going to get us both back. 1 week later, Hawthorne called with news that changed everything. I found her, he said without preamble. The real Sunny Lee, the woman who died. She was a Jane Doe from a clinic in Gary, Indiana. Died of a drug overdose, body unclaimed. Someone paid off the clinic to falsify records saying she died in childbirth. Can you prove the Hwangs were involved? Working on it. But here's the kicker, I found your medical records from this specialized facility they put you in. It wasn't a recovery center. It was a psychiatric hospital, and you were held under a false diagnosis of delusional disorder. My blood ran cold. They committed me? For 8 months. Then you were transferred to a memory care facility under another false diagnosis. They basically kept you drugged and institutionalized until they were sure your memory was gone and you couldn't threaten the engagement. That's illegal. Kidnapping, false imprisonment. All of the above. And I've got a doctor willing to testify that he was pressured to keep you sedated and diagnose you despite having no actual disorder. He's been carrying guilt about it for years. Hope surged in my chest. That's enough, isn't it? To prove what they did. It's a start. But we need DNA proof that you're Jiho's mother. That's the smoking gun. Can you get a sample? I live with him. That's not the problem. I hesitated. When we go public with this, it's going to be a media firestorm. The Hwangs have resources. Which is why we need to be bulletproof. Get me that DNA evidence. I'll compile everything else. Then we approach them with an ultimatum before going to the press. What kind of ultimatum? Full custody of Jiho, financial compensation for what they did to you, and they stay the hell out of your life. Or we go public and let the chips fall. It was dangerous. It was risky. But it was also my only shot. Do it, I said. Getting the DNA samples was easy. A cheek swab from Jiho during a diaper change, a strand of my hair. I sent them to the lab Hawthorne recommended, paying extra for rush processing. 3 days later, the results came back. 99.9% probability that I was Jiho's biological mother. I sat in my room, holding the printed report, and cried for the first time since all this started. Not from sadness, but from relief and rage and overwhelming love for the child they'd stolen from me. I had proof now. I had witnesses. I had enough to destroy them. But first, I had to tell Kiang the truth. I found him in his study late on a Wednesday night, hunched over his desk with a glass of whiskey and a stack of contracts. He looked exhausted, beautiful, and so achingly familiar that my heart hurt. Tehilla. He looked up in surprise. Is Jiho okay? He's fine. Asleep. I need to talk to you. Something in my tone made him put down his pen. What's wrong? I closed the door behind me, locking it. Then I pulled out my phone and opened the photo album I'd been compiling, pictures of the old album, the DNA results, medical records Hawthorne had obtained. I need you to look at something, I said. And I need you to listen to everything I'm about to tell you without interrupting, because if I stop, I might not be able to start again. He nodded slowly, clearly concerned. Okay. I handed him my phone, starting with the first image, the photo of young Kiang with his arm around a girl who looked exactly like me. This is from 3 years ago, I said. The woman in this photo, do you recognize her? Kiang's face went white. That's Sunny. But how did you get this? Look closer. That's not Sunny. That's me. What? No, that's impossible. You said you've never met me. I lied. Or rather, I didn't know I was lying because I didn't remember. I took a shaky breath. My name is Tehilla Banks. 3 years ago, I was a student at Northwestern. I was dating you. Your mother had me run off the road, then institutionalized me for 8 months while she told you I was recovering. When they finally released me, I had no memory, no identity, nothing. I became Tehilla Omarosa and rebuilt my life from scratch. That's insane. My mother wouldn't. Look at the next photo, I interrupted. He scrolled. Found the medical records, the doctor's testimony, the timeline that showed how Madame Hwang had systematically erased me. This can't be real, he whispered. Keep going. He scrolled to the DNA results. His hands started shaking. You're Jiho's mother, he breathed. Sunny wasn't Sunny. She was someone else, someone my mother hired to play me, yes. To get pregnant by someone else and claim it was yours, creating a scandal that you could overcome by marrying Valentina after the convenient death. Kiang set down the phone like it had burned him. He stood, paced to the window, his shoulders rigid. My mother stole your entire life. She took our child from you. She let me mourn you while you were being tortured in some facility. Yes. And then she hired you to care for your own son, thinking you'd never remember. She made a mistake, I said. She brought me back. Jiho recognized me because babies know their mothers. You recognized something in me because we loved each other. And piece by piece, I remembered. He turned to face me, and the devastation in his eyes broke my heart. I let you go. When she said you needed space to heal, I believed her. I abandoned you. You didn't know, I tried to soothe him, but he cut me off. I should have known. He slammed his hand against the desk, making me jump. I should have fought harder, questioned more, refused to accept her bullshit explanations. But I was weak and cowardly, and you paid the price. I crossed over to him, taking his face in my hands. Listen to me. Your mother is a master manipulator who's been controlling you your entire life. You're not weak or cowardly, you're a victim too. Jiho is your son, he said, his voice breaking. Our son. And I didn't even know you were carrying him when you disappeared. We could have had 3 years together, raising him, being a family. We still can, I said fiercely. I have enough evidence to destroy your mother's reputation and get full custody of Jiho. But I wanted you to know the truth first, because you deserve that. You deserve to decide what happens next. Kiang pulled me into his arms, holding me so tight I could barely breathe. His face was buried in my hair, his body shaking with silent sobs. I'm so sorry, he whispered. For everything you went through, for not finding you, for believing you were dead. Stop, I said, pulling back to look at him. We've both been victims of your mother's schemes. But we're together now. We remember now. And we can fight back. Together, he repeated, and something fierce and determined entered his expression. You're right. No more letting her win. He kissed me then, desperate and claiming, and it felt like coming home. Memories flooded back, hundreds of kisses just like this one, stolen moments when we'd been young and in love and stupid enough to think we could overcome his family's objections. When we finally broke apart, I was crying again. I remember, I whispered. I remember all of it. How much I loved you. How scared I was when your mother threatened me. The accident, the pain, the confusion when I woke up in that facility with doctors telling me I was delusional, that you never existed. I existed, he said fiercely. We existed. And we still do. So, what do we do now? Kiang's expression hardened with resolve. Now? We go to war. The confrontation happened at breakfast. Kiang had called a family meeting him, his mother, Valentina, and Ms. Park. I wasn't supposed to be there, but he'd insisted, positioning me beside him at the dining table with Jiho in my arms. Madame Hwang's expression when she saw me was priceless, shock, fury, and just a flicker of fear. What is the help doing at the family table? She demanded. Tehilla isn't the help, Kiang said calmly. She's Jiho's mother. My partner. And the woman you tried to destroy. Valentina's fork clattered to her plate. Excuse me. Mother, would you like to explain, or should I? When Madame Hwang remained silent, Kiang pulled out a folder thick with documents. 2 years ago, you had Tehilla Banks, the woman I was dating, run off the road. When she survived, you had her committed to a psychiatric facility under a false diagnosis, keeping her drugged and imprisoned for 8 months. That's absurd, Madame Hwang said, but her voice wavered. Is it? Because I have medical records, witness testimony from the doctors you paid off, and proof that you falsified death certificates to fake her death later. He slid papers across the table. You hired an imposter to play the role of Sunny, to create a scandal you could control. Then when the real Tehilla started recovering memories, you staged the imposter's death and hired the real one back as a nurse, thinking she'd never remember. Ms. Park's face had gone gray. Valentina looked between everyone in confusion. Someone explain what the hell is happening, she demanded. What's happening, I said quietly, is that Madame Hwang committed multiple felonies to keep Kiang under control. Kidnapping, false imprisonment, fraud, conspiracy. And now she's going to face consequences. You have no proof, Madame Hwang said, but she was gripping the table. Kiang pulled out his phone, opening a recording app. Actually, we do. Including this lovely conversation where you confessed to Tehilla about faking her death. I'd recorded my confrontation with Madame Hwang in the library, and while Illinois was a 2-party consent state, the recording was still evidence of her intentions, if not admissible in court. This is extortion, Madame Hwang spat. No, Kiang corrected. This is justice. You have 2 options. 1. You grant Tehilla full legal recognition as Jiho's mother, compensate her for 2 years of suffering, and remove yourself from any involvement in our lives. You'll maintain your position in the company, but you'll have no say in personal matters ever again. And option 2? We go to the press. Every document, every testimony, every piece of evidence gets released. The Hwang family name gets dragged through the mud, the company stock crashes, and you likely face criminal charges. Your choice. The silence was deafening. Valentina finally broke it. I'm not marrying into this insanity, she announced, standing. Consider our engagement permanently off, Kiang. Your family is toxic. She grabbed her purse and walked out, heels clicking against marble. Honestly, I liked her more in that moment than I had the entire time I'd known her. Madame Hwang sat frozen, her face filled with barely controlled fury. Finally, she spoke. Fine. Draft your terms. But know this, you're making a powerful enemy. I already had one, Kiang said coldly. At least now I know where she stands. The legal negotiations took 3 weeks. In the end, Madame Hwang agreed to everything. Full parental rights for me, a 7-figure settlement for damages, and a legally binding agreement that she would have only supervised visits with Jiho until he was 18. At which point he could choose his level of contact. She also agreed to step back from Kiang's personal life entirely, maintaining only a business relationship. The money meant I could afford the best trauma therapist in Chicago to help me process everything I'd been through. The custody agreement meant I could finally, legally, be Jiho's mother. And Kiang. Kiang was mine again, in all the ways that mattered. We didn't rush into anything. There was too much to unpack, too much healing to do. But we started dating again, real dates, not stolen moments in a nursery. Dinners, museums, walks through Lincoln Park with Jiho in a stroller. My memories continued returning in fragments. Some were beautiful, our first kiss, the night Kiang told me he loved me, plans we'd made for a future together. Others were nightmares, the terror of the accident, the confusion of the facility, the slow erasure of myself. But through it all, Kiang was there. Patient, loving, racked with guilt I kept trying to absolve him of. I should have looked harder, he said one night, 6 weeks after the confrontation. We were in his apartment. He'd moved out of the family mansion immediately, with Jiho asleep in his nursery. You thought I was dead, I reminded him. You can't blame yourself for grieving. I could have questioned why she died so conveniently. Why the body was cremated so fast. Why I wasn't allowed to, his voice broke. I pulled him close, and we sat there in the dark, two broken people trying to piece themselves back together. We're both here now, I whispered. We both survived. That's what matters. I love you, he said. I never stopped, even when I thought I was mourning someone else. Some part of me always knew. I love you too. Even when I didn't remember, I felt it. Like a ghost of something important. We kissed, slow and sweet, and for the first time in 2 years, everything felt right. 2 months later, the press had eventually caught wind of the story. Impossible to keep something this explosive quiet forever. But by then, we controlled the narrative. Madame Hwang was painted as the villain she was, Kiang as the devoted father fighting for his family, and me as the survivor who'd overcome unimaginable odds. Public opinion rallied around us. Hwang Industries took a stock hit initially, but Kiang's leadership and transparency about implementing new ethics policies eventually stabilized things. Madame Hwang lived in her mansion, alone except for staff, cut off from the family she'd tried so hard to control. Jiho thrived. At 15 months old, he was hitting every milestone, a happy baby who loved his parents equally. The bond between us was unbreakable, something not even Amnesia could destroy. And Kiang and I? We were building the life we should have had 2 years ago. Slowly, carefully, but undeniably. He proposed on the anniversary of the day we'd met in that Korean language class, presenting me with a ring and a promise. No more secrets. No more time apart. Just us, raising our son, living the life we choose. I said yes before he even finished the question. We got married quietly, just us and Jiho and a handful of friends, in a small ceremony at the Botanical Gardens. No press, no family drama, just love. As we danced our first dance as a married couple, Jiho sleeping contentedly in his grandmother's arms, my mother, who I'd reconnected with after regaining my memories, Kiang whispered, "Thank you for coming back to me." "Thank you for never really letting me go," I replied. Later, when I was tucking Jiho into his crib, I thought about everything we'd survived. The accident, the lost years, the manipulation, the pain. But also the resilience, the love that had survived amnesia, and the family we'd fought so hard to reclaim. "Your story starts now, little one," I whispered, kissing his forehead. "Not with loss or secrets, but with 2 parents who love you more than anything and will fight anyone who tries to hurt our family." Jiho made a soft sound, his tiny hand curling around my finger. And in that moment, I knew we'd won. Not because we'd destroyed Madame Hwang or reclaimed our lives, but because we'd survived and chosen love over bitterness, family over revenge, hope over despair. The past couldn't be changed, but the future? That was ours to write. And we were just getting started. If you enjoyed this story, kindly like, subscribe, and share to your friends and loved ones.